to what I can only describe as probably the most exciting session for NASSCOM 2012. I think as product entrepreneurs, we often are very capable of coming up with the product. We are very capable of building the product. And then, we face the huge challenge of attracting customers and growing the user base. And that's what these two young gentlemen are extremely capable at, and they have demonstrated time and time again on their ability to not just get to their first 100K, but to their first 100 million even in some cases. So it'll be very interesting to get their perspectives on how one should think about growing their company once the product launches. And let's start with getting to the first 100K, which is very critical, and then beyond. Just very quickly to introduce the two panelists, we have Narayan Babu, who is the founder and CEO of Dexetra. Dexetra is the creator of Iris and Friday. These are two Android applications which you may be very familiar with. And I believe Iris is the Siri equivalent for the Android platform, and it's done extremely well with some 5 million downloads since its launch. And Friday is the other product which I'll let Narayan talk to you more about. I'm very interested in hearing about his launch strategy, his differentiation, and what he's created in a very crowded mobile market and a very noisy mobile market. And then, of course, Chamath's been introduced about 6 times since yesterday. I'll do one more pass at it. He was the VP of user growth, mobile, and international expansion at Facebook, and that's what he's best known for. But prior to that, he was also at Winamp, at AOL, and has held very successful positions there. Now, I want this, there's a lot of people here, there's a lot of chairs here. If you can move in quickly. What I want to do is take about 30 minutes asking the panelists a few questions, talking to them about their experiences, and I mostly want this to be your session, so I want you to be very proactive and ask a lot of questions. Otherwise, we're going to have half an hour of silence and just clapping. So before anything else, let's just kick off. I want to talk to the panelists, or I want the panelists to talk to us about a growth team, this new concept that now I hear every company in the Silicon Valley throw out. And Chamath, you were the original creator of the growth team at Facebook. And it was created not when Facebook was at 1 million users or 2 million users. I believe it was created when it was 50 million users. And you guys were, or maybe slightly less than 50 million users, you guys were well and truly on the road to success. And so tell us a little bit more about what a growth team is, why it was created, what was the charter, and what does it do on a day-to-day basis?
I told this story briefly yesterday, but the prelude to the growth team is almost as important as the growth team, which was that when I first started at Facebook, my job was to sort of help oversee a bunch of different product areas, and our team created Facebook Platform. And once we created it, we had a fair amount of natural adoption, but shortly thereafter, we built a whole set of products, including some monetization products, which unfortunately were not that successful. And the byproduct of one of those products, which was called Beacon, which is sort of my most infamous patent, was resulted in us getting us sued by literally everyone I could imagine, from individuals to the FTC to most governments around the world. And at the same time, because of all of that negative press around those product launches, we were worried that the site had sort of stalled. Yep. And it had, I think, about 18 million users at the time. And so we created this team for 2 reasons. One, for me personally, it was a way for me to redeem myself because I felt that I had really screwed up. But then the second was, frankly, to save the company because I was worried that it wasn't going to get where we wanted it to go. And when we started the team, basically I had 5 people. I had 3 engineers and 2 product managers. And basically what we spent the first 6 months doing was disproving all of the institutional intuition that had built up in the company up until that point. The great thing with sort of natural viral adoption of a product is when you get it right, you actually don't really know what you did right. What you really just have is a lot of people using something. And most companies then, again, as I said earlier, conflate that with some amount of skill, and then they start to listen to their own intuition. And what you have are people that run around the company saying things like, well, I've tried that before, that doesn't work. Or, my intuition tells me this. Or, well, this is what I feel like we should do. And I always used to say, like, I don't care what you're feeling. It's just like, it's not what matters. And so I wanted to sort of disprove, as much as I wanted to prove what caused things to grow, was really just to take away a lot of the firepower that a lot of people had from making stuff up. And so the first 6 months, all the team did was basically counteract all of the perceived ways in which we thought that the site worked. And as a result of disproving, what we figured out was what the true core product value was. And what we figured out was Facebook as a company, when you found a way to get an individual user to 7 friends in less than 10 days, they would become highly engaged. And those two numbers became inviolate for us. We would never violate those in terms of the way that we design products and features going forward. And we could optimize against that by building the right set of products that created product flows, that created user behaviors, that reinforced that thing. And that's what caused the site to go nuclear. That one simple thing. But we wouldn't have figured it out if we weren't measuring stuff. And we wouldn't have measured stuff unless we actually started by first trying to disprove it. Now I think the problem is that that has become somewhat bastardized in the industry, and now growth is something very different. Most people focus on virality, most people focus on K, but that's a fancy way of calling things spam. And spam is terrible. It ruins the internet. You've been spammed, you don't like it, neither do I, so why build a product that spams people? And I think that what people now need to have, again, is this discipline of understanding what growth really means, which is understanding consumer behavior, understanding what key, simple product value is, and then marrying those two things together, and then building flows that reinforce that positive experience that an individual user has.
Right. And we'll talk about product analytics and instrumentation in just a second. But Narayan, I'd love to hear your thoughts. I mean, I've built Android apps in my spare time. I've built iOS applications, and I get 6 of my buddies to very quickly adopt. But beyond that, it gets very hard. So tell me your mobile story. How you've been successful in getting growth at Dextera or for Iris.
So people.
And actually, before you answer,
very quickly, a lot of people standing at the back. You are welcome to come to this side. Nobody has slides. You can use the site, and please close the door if possible. Sorry.
Yeah, no worries. Sorry, Narayan.
Even though we are perceived as a mobile company, the mobile team is very small. I mean, small in the sense 2 or 3 people. So 7 or 8 people. Yeah. 7 or 8. And the major chunk is mostly people who work on the cloud. So for Iris, the story is the same, right? So the cloud is what actually drives the program. So that's the case with most of the successful mobile apps today. If you see the top 100 apps,
yeah,
everything has a cloud, or a server entity to that. So this was standalone mobile apps, apart from maybe a couple of games. So for us, if we step back, the story is that we built Iris in 8 hours. So that's not true, or that's not false also. Like we built a mobile app in 8 hours, but we already had the building blocks built over a year. So we had a lot of NLP stuff done. We had a lot of machine learning. So we were doing something much more cooler, which now launches Friday. So we had built these pieces, and
right,
we got the right time, and we had the guts to just think like, okay, Siri has launched today, and everybody is talking about Apple. So obviously there's a polarization between the Android and the Apple community. The fan base always fight, and obviously we are also in one of the camps.
Right.
So when you see all the stream on the Facebook and Twitter showing that Siri is the coolest thing has ever happened and all, so we had a bet like, let us do it in 8 hours. We had a bet like, we can do this in 8 hours. It's not a big deal. So we scraped them stuff from the Wikipedia, from the Stanford, here and there. So we built a small cloud engine which could actually serve answers, and we just built a mobile app, and we didn't want to put it in the market. We just wanted to take a prize, like we can build this. But somehow it went out, TechCrunch posted about it. So people started using it. I mean, they posted the download link for that, and then it went out of control. So we had to put it in the market in a very systematic way without infringing any copyrights. So that's when we actually launched it in the market. So in a couple of days, maybe in 2 days, we had hit 100K users. So no credit to us at all. It's all we're in the right time, in the right place. But from there to 5 million, we did a lot of work. So, for example, at the peak time, we serve like 7 to 10 answers per second, like so a million queries a day. So we had to, without going down, we had to build a server infrastructure to manage this kind of information.
Right.
And we were like noobs in that time when it comes to cloud and stuff, building for scale. But somehow it came on well, and so that's why like we are still growing. We have 40-50% active users and 30% daily actives. Okay.
So is there someone specifically in your company responsible for growth, or is it everyone's business? Is it your business? Like, who's looking at growth?
So everybody is looking at growth here, because
Okay.
we had 10 people working in etc. when we launched Iris, and everybody is everything. Like obviously in a startup like this, that's what happens. And we keep on reading all the stuff, what people are thinking about product, and what we get a lot of emails from users like, we don't like this, Siri's talking so obnoxious, and this and that. So we look at each of that and see what should be change in that. And we get a lot of feedback in the App Store. That's a good thing about that. So people say bluntly, like, this is not good, this is bad, this is good. So we rapidly iterate all the time to make sure we are every week when we have a release, we fix the top 5 issues that people are saying.
Got
so it's happening. It's a weekly basis. We are improving a product.
Got it. All right, let's switch gears quickly. Chamath, I would love for you to talk about organic and inorganic growth. So there's a lot of, there's a thinking at least that, if it's a mobile product or a web product, you build it and it's ready, and then you go and buy some ads. Whether you go to Tapjoy and buy some installs, or you go to Facebook ads and you buy some ads, and you're kind of lighting the fire, and you're adding a little bit of like starter fluid to get things going. And then hopefully some of the things that you have in place will take over and you'll get that organic growth. How did you think about this, or how do you advise companies regarding organic and inorganic and the timing of it?
So I think organic is really 2 different types. There's the natural organic traffic, which happens when you actually build something good. And then there's unqualified organic traffic, which is all these random people just come and you have no idea where they came from. And they mostly come because of PR. And PR mostly comes because you built something at a point in time where there's an interesting angle for them not to really tell your story because they care, but because it helps them generate page views. That you can't predict. So taking that off the table and assuming that you don't get lucky, then you're left with natural organic traffic and then paid traffic. And I'm a huge fan of paid traffic.
Yeah.
And it's really valuable if you actually understand what you're building, such that you have basically 2 doors into the same house. So irrespective of whether you come through qualified organic channels or paid channels, but if they both become engaged monthly active users, now then you're really just in an economic equation of how fast you can actually cycle in money to get to a point where you tip. And by tipping, what you really want to do is just have more organic than inorganic, and eventually inorganic becomes a small component. But at Facebook, when we were starting to launch, for example, in Korea, we had 0 users. In Russia, we had 0 users. In Japan, we had 0 users. What did we do? The most aggressive thing we did was in Russia. We literally went out and we bought every single name of every single Russian. We computed every single combination of those names, and we bought every single possible keyword.
Wow.
And you've probably done this, but you Google your own name. Well, guess what? They do it everywhere in the world. And so, we spent money.
Yeah.
But it was fine because, again, going back to what we had already figured out, we knew what the core value was.
Right.
And we knew that independent of this channel, once we got them there, as long as we could get them those 7 friends, get it to them, in some number of days, and then it would work. And it did. And I think today it's even more important leveraging these inorganic channels because we're in the middle of a land grab. You are all in the middle of a land grab. If you're trying to define this battle by trying to build the most elegant product that has natural organic growth in the absence of, something like exceptional timing, you're kidding yourself. You have these platforms that are coming out of nowhere. You have a new platform basically every 3 to 4 months. In each of those platforms, it's a completely blank slate who's going to win and who's not going to win. These app stores are terrible. There's no distribution. There's no discovery. So unless you're one of the exceptional few that can grow completely organically, then you should be aggressively finding ways to use these inorganic channels.
Right. And Narayan, have you pursued organic, inorganic? A lot of what I've heard is organic.
Yeah, so obviously we could not go out and buy out all the AdWords. We hardly could.
Not all of them in Russia, but
so,
maybe.
But what we thought was we focus more on social engineering.
Yeah.
And we thought that's a very important aspect. And talking about the other product of Friday, which is more into privacy and your personal things. And so from design, a company has been always having a good social engineering aspect, so that people, what happened with color, right?
Yeah.
Even though they tried to do something really cool, but the way it was projected in the market, people were like so jealous maybe, or maybe really pissed off that these guys are getting $40 million when I'm not having my lunch. So there was a lot of negative comments. If you see all the posts, what happened in the social media. So we try to avoid that, and every positive sentiment that's been expressed, we try to accentuate it by replying to them. And so every user we get, we try to make them evangelists.
Yeah.
So maybe we are on the other side of the chasm. We are just early adopter stage. So maybe that was help. But we didn't spend a penny on till now we haven't spent any penny on this. So this PR thing happens, and it's like a initial surge, like maybe a couple of days or maybe even a couple of weeks if it's a really huge thing.
And often they're not the best users, I hear.
Yeah.
Like TechCrunch users are not your good users.
Yeah,
they will come use your product and then just leave, and then leave a big vacuum behind.
No, it's about making the best out of it.
Yeah.
Get the App Store ratings up. Get into the Y Combinator posts, news in the Y Combinator, getting tweet memes and all these things, and so that more and more early adopters get into the system, and we keep engaging with them in different media like Twitter, Facebook. And I think one important thing is people easily differentiate between a hobby app and a professional app. If you see, go to an app store, if you see a person who just created an app, he would have given a very random description, random screenshots and random stuff. And if you see a proper app, like say Angry Birds, they did a awesome promo video, which like everybody was sharing all over the internet.
Yeah.
And it made us feel like, okay, this is a really good app. Look, they put in time to build a video. And so even though we were really cash strapped, we didn't have any money, we put some money to create a video where people would like come and see, okay, this is what the app is all about. In 30 seconds, they get to know what this is all about. And people get a feeling that this is something really cool, and this is a professional thing, not just a wannabe app.
Right.
So these things help.
So having heard what Chamath said about you absolutely being a land grab mentality, are you going to consider inorganic?
Well, let me just clarify. I mean, for what he's doing, it's less of a land grab in the sense that it's very difficult to build that type of app.
Sure. There's a lot of
and
technology
so
there.
there's not going to be a lot of folks doing the same thing that they're doing. But let me give you a different example.
Yep.
So for example, in education, the average ARPU in the App Store across all devices, Android or Apple, is 5x greater than the ARPU in any other category. So the average ARPU for most apps is about 97 cents. So that means you can almost generate almost $5 of ARPU as an education app. They're just priced at a premium. People pay a premium. Now, if you're trying to build an education company and you've not thought about monetization in advance, you're being stupid. Just plain and simple.
Right.
Because the revenue potential is there right out of the gate. And then second, if you're engineering and you have thought elegantly about the combination of social incentives, the right specific pay gates, etc., you're in a position now where even with a small amount of organic users, you should be able to fund at break even the ability to expand faster. The point isn't to spend $1 million if you don't have $1 million. Not all of us is going to be able to raise that much money. But the point is that every single user has some amount of value, and every incremental user has a bunch of value as well, X of the decay, and it's to figure out that formula and then figure out how to grow fast. Because I think that what's going to happen for most categories is that you'll just get inundated with 19,000 variations of the same thing.
Right.
And so if you're not either accidentally first or accidentally blogged about in a category with lots of competitors, how do you differentiate yourself? And I do think for most people, having a small amount of capital allocated not necessarily to people, but allocated to marketing is actually reasonable, especially now.
Yeah. And I think a good example of that are all these daily deal sites, right? Had they not computed the ARPU, and had they not, had they not put that money back in organic.
It's a great point. It's a self-fulfilling prophecy. Like, I remember Mark Pincus was in my office every day when I ran Facebook platform. Just, Chamath, what are the apps that are working? What are the apps that are working? Show me, show me, show me, show me. And I didn't see Zynga coming at all. For the first 6 months he was in my office, I had no idea what he was doing.
And no one saw it going either.
And no one saw it until it was obvious.
Yeah.
But the great thing was he was able to paint a picture that combined some amount of small organic traffic with a lot of sort of like engineered growth. Now, you can complain about what the end product of it is today, but there's still tens and tens of millions of people that rely on what he's built. And frankly, he's built an extremely valuable thing. And similarly, I think most of us will run into that sort of paradox of choice. And it's I think it's the opportunity that a lot of people are ignoring because I think there's a lot of valor in trying to grow. Now, the reality is, if you have a great product and you've launched it and nobody's using it, what do you do now?
Right. And I think that
What
is
do you do?
every entrepreneur's question.
I think
at some
one more
point
thing
you go
is,
through that.
as you talked about virality, I think people take it really personal, right? They want to grow as fast as possible. I think there's a certain pace for each app to grow. If you see, for example, Path, right? They're not, adding users like thousands or lakhs of users every day, right? Yeah. They've been around for 3 years. They have 3 million users, but they have very good 3 million users.
I totally agree with you. I think LinkedIn is another great example.
Yeah.
They grew extremely, they grew at their own rate, and what they didn't do was get dissuaded by looking at everybody else's growth curves.
Exactly.
Exactly.
And one more thing is when you pay for users and get them in, you have to be able to retain them. So unless your platform is not ready to retain all these users, that they actually come through all these channels. So there's no point in pushing really hard to get all those users try your app. So
Right.
you're just getting negative publicity there.
So, as an example, I had this company that these two guys started in the education space. And for the first 6 months, all we did was iterate on product. And literally, they did so much grassroots outreach. They went to education conferences. They literally went to schools in the Bay Area, introduced this platform to parents. And, I think in the first 2 months, we had 3,000 users. I mean, literally 3,000. But what we had was really good engagement. And for me, it was statistically significant enough because I said, you know what, this is working. If it works for these 3,000, it'll work.
Yeah.
And so it took us another 4 or 5 months to get to like 10 or 15,000 users. And then it took another month to get to like 30,000. And then it was like, wow, because all of these engaged parents would now start to basically tell these other people. Again, because we spent the first 3 months in the absence of any feedback just building a really good product. And then the app ratings went up, and then it got promoted a little bit more, and then it was on the first screen of results. And then we had this really interesting inflection point where I walked into the team, this was in June, and I yelled at them, and for effect. I was really proud of them, but I pretended I was really pissed off, and I said, this is crap, now you need to grow. Put money into this problem. And they said, we're going to run out of money. I said, I don't care. Because you're not going to raise around if we don't have any. And at the time, I had only given them a few $100,000 to test this idea. Anyways, they took the last slug of money that they had strictly for forced acquisition. And they were scared. They're like, oh my God, this is not going to work. But I had confidence because I saw the loops and I could see. The engagement was incredible. And so the bet was, it doesn't matter where they come in, they're all going to find value.
Right.
And in the last 3 months, they've grown to 1 million users. And then, now they raised around, and now that we put in $2 million. But it took a huge risk with this last $150,000, $200,000 that they had. But it was because the first, literally 5 or 6 months, in the absence of any feedback, they just built something really good that retained users. And when we asked Flurry, rank us, and you should do this, and Flurry and these other guys are very good about it, we said, show us where we rank in terms of 30-day, 60-day, 90-day retention relative to every other app in education and every other app, broadly speaking. And we were the upper decile. And so you just knew that this thing was working.
Right. I think once you have good product market fit, adding inorganic measures or other measures.
But it can happen at 3,000, it can happen at 50,000.
Another example I can give you
And
about
Pinterest is a great example of that as well, right?
Yeah.
They iterated like 2 years. No one heard about this company.
By the way, Pinterest is another fantastic example. Sorry, you finish and I'll tell
I know.
you.
The same example. See, we started Dextra to build a product called Friday. So we started building that 2 years ago. So building a mobile app for 2 years. Like people are like, what? You're crazy. so we had a very cautious approach on that. So we had two contrasting approach on Iris and Friday.
Yeah.
So what Iris is a very giving a background of what Friday does is Friday is a completely passive service that runs on your phone.
Yeah.
And that captures every bit of information, right from your location, your battery level, whatever you're doing, what music you're listening to, all these things. and you can just press a button and ask, see, last Sunday I was watching Dark Knight in a theater and I took 2 pictures there. Can you show me that pictures? It'll just show you that pictures.
Excellent.
Or you can ask like, how many times did I visit my mom last month? It'll tell you that 23 times. So it knows your complete life inside out, and it builds a complete context profile in the cloud. So it's like whole passive journal of your life. So this is very personal, very personal. People, the first question will say that this is creepy. This is what about my privacy? So we didn't want to push this app into virality and bring every user in, because there's going to be a lot of negative publicity.
Yeah.
So we built this app for a year. We put in private alpha. We had 10,000 users in that, and it's a very early stage. We got a lot of feedback from them. We kept them engaging with our product, to get feedback. Then this year we launched a private beta, and then after close to 2 years we launched it in the App Store. And the growth has not been that exponential as Iris, because this is a very private, very personal product. Not everybody wants this. And since 3 months, we have close to 100K users. And the interesting thing is, the good metric to look at is, this 100,000 users have pushed in over 100 million documents in the cloud.
It's pretty
So
amazing.
that's similar to, compared to the number of documents that you have in iCloud, right?
Right.
So we were really impressed. So these people, the daily actives is more than 30%. So we don't want to push this really, really fast before we know where we are going towards. We don't know how a layman is going to look at this product. It might feel it's really creepy, and this is not what I want. So we want to push it in a very channelized, in a very controlled manner, and grow that, not the way like in Iris. So take the example of Evernote, for example. They're completely antiviral, right? That's what they advertise. So they're not viral at all, but now they have close to 20 million users.
Yeah.
And that's something they took time, but they built it, very, really strong.
That's awesome. So folks, the story is, I guess the moral of the story is, you can take your time, get your product market fit, and eventually the users will come and they will add to that growth number. Chamath, I think you were about to comment on Pinterest very quickly.
I think it's a great example of sort of, again, valuing sort of like discipline and an internal belief about product quality over any sort of external feedback. They spend a lot of time just grinding it out.
I think it's your phone that's interfering. All right, doesn't matter. Keep going.
Here, let me just turn this off just in case it's me. So, those guys spent so much time basically finding all of these individuals that were just like fervent supporters of this product. And that takes just a lot of courage. Or, another great example is this company, Remind 101 in the US, which is this thing that literally from, I think they're probably like 4 months old, and they've gone from 0 to 2.2 million users in 4 months. And they're adding like 30,000 a day. But, all of their growth came from individual people blogging about that service. It's like a communications platform through Pinterest and through these other channels. But what those guys did, which was shocking to me, is they literally had like 100 people that were their product ambassadors, quote unquote, that they just talked to incessantly all the time. And so I just think what this means is most products, I think there are very, very few products that are exceptionally just so truly good that they win as soon as they launch. Very, very few. Everybody else is frankly banded in this middle. And in this middle, there's a bunch of luck, there's a bunch of random PR, there's a bunch of timing, but then there are the few things that are in your control. And part of it is you talk to your users and you figure out, like what Narayan is doing, how do they use it, what are the behaviors, how do I optimize it? That seems like, it's almost antithetical to the bravado of how people want to say they built a company. But that's actually the thing that's the most valuable, So I just think that there's a...
And users aren't really bad. I mean, they don't just trash your app as soon as... They give you time, right? They give you second chances, they give you third chance.
There's another great company in China called Xiaomi, which is basically the Apple of China. And they basically, take Android and they, right down to almost the VM, rewrite everything. And they build their own hardware and everything. But the entire success of that company has basically been capturing a few hundred early adopters around that product and have them becoming, these people that are bullhorns that just shout constantly about the quality of their phones. And I just think, again, those are principles that, every other industry has adopted. Consumer product good companies, auto companies, all of these people listen to some amount of feedback. They appropriately process it. They don't ask them, what do you want? That's never a good question. People don't know what they want. But it's always good to sort of see how people react and interact with your product, figure out what makes them excited, figure out what the aha moment is, figure out what they're afraid of, and then solve those things.
One more thing is like unemotionally we should know where our product stands in terms of quality, right? Is it a product for everybody? Or if you look at Iris, even though it has more 5 million users, I won't say that's the best product we have created. We know where Friday stands. Like Friday is something that nobody else has created. It's something that's really niche. So that will help you, drive your, growth plan. I mean, to decide how to grow. You should know like exactly how good this product is right now for the people. And so most of the passion comes in front. Like we were like, this is the coolest thing. No, I built it. Man. This cannot fail. So this we should come out of that shell. Initially, we all have that. When you do a startup, and we believe that ours is the best idea and ours is the best product.
Yep.
So going to reality check, we know like where we are standing in the.
I think that makes perfect sense. Folks, we have just about 25 minutes left. I have maybe one more question for the panelists, but I would encourage you to start coming up front, and I don't know what Sanjay wants to do. Sanjay, do you want them to line up to ask their question? Sanjay's in conversation, but at least have your questions ready, and then we can have you ask the questions on the microphone there. Yeah, you can actually start coming up. This is a bit of a controversial question. When I was at Say Now, I was responsible for bringing on our first 10 million users. It was a product that was working okay. It wasn't the best. It wasn't a runaway success. I believe Say Now. We were riding the coattails of MySpace, and we were promoting on the coattails of MySpace. But often I would find that growth came at a cost, and it would sometimes be at odds with the true, right, sincere product to build. Sometimes it would be at odds with a true business model that you would like to pursue. I think both of you guys must have had experiences where growth came at a cost. And how did you think about that? How would you encourage the audience to think about that?
Well, I mean, in our experience, actually, I think the framework that we used within the growth team was it's about 4 things: acquisition, activation, engagement, and virality. And we defined virality as the last phase. And by doing that in this 4-step path, I allowed us to never focus on it because companies can really only do 1 or 2 things, maybe 3 if you're lucky, but never 4. And so I never allowed us to focus on virality, which meant that we never figured out all of these stupid little tricks that people use now to trick you into importing your entire address book and spamming them. And that destroys product experiences, I think, to your point, and creates conflict. The things that we did, I mean, like, if you had to sort of like re-engineer the news feed for someone who is new to the site so that they would encounter stories and they would encounter their friends or find different features and use a bunch of like, machine learning and AI to figure out who your potential friends are. Those are complicated products. That's what we built. We didn't worry about contact importers and all this other crap. Now, we did that stuff, but we did that stuff after as a byproduct of having things that we knew were ultimately working. And so, for me, I think that growth should never be in conflict with the fundamental core product strategy of the company. Growth actually is an expression of the core fundamental product strategy of a company, which is if you're building something good, you want it in the hands of as many of the most appropriate people as possible. The only way to do that is to make sure that you're focused on that value over and above everything else and are demonstrating that value in as many new ways as possible. And when you lose sight of that, that's when you basically see these spikes.
Right. And I think you're making a very subtle point there, Chamath. I think when people consider growth, they typically think of acquisition. What you're saying is, well, it's not just acquisition. It's acquisition,
I think it's
activation,
right?
engagement, and retention, and then the virality, I guess it would be the 5th one.
Virality is a natural byproduct
of
engaged users.
Sure.
In most products.
So I think when you consider your growth numbers, you almost should think about, well, what % did I acquire?
So that's a very good point. We never, ever, ever looked at registered users, ever. We looked at monthly active users until that number became really big, and then we wanted to change the goal so that people didn't become lazy, and so then we started to measure daily active users. So the minute that monthly active users hit 500 million, we're like, oh shit, we need to change the goal. Oh, let's look at DAUs. And now DAUs was like less than 100 million. And so you start again. And to your point, it's that, again, having the discipline to focus on engagement is really important.
Right. Narayan, I'm sure very different experience, but interesting ones.
So initially when we built, one good thing we had was, like Iris was like a, a dog for and test everything, right? So because we didn't really spend a lot of effort on that, and we could ruthlessly try out new things, fail, again try, and we can keep Friday in a safe place, and all the good things can come, like a Fedora versus Red Hat kind of
Right.
scenario. So what we learned first from Friday was we were like just newbies starting, and we realized that we have to measure engagement. We have to have a big analytic platform. So we spent a lot of time building this, building an analytic platform, so that we can know, we can go systematic. Like intuition is one thing, systematically growing is another thing. So I can say like this red button looks really cool. I mean, people will love it. And next day when I put the red button in the next release, I can actually see if I should be able to see a spike in that engagement. I should be able to pinpoint some portion of my graph that this is the red button which created this. If I can know that, I think we can fail, but still we can know what happened. I can use that in the next product.
Right.
So that's what we learned from that. So for us, when we built a product and launched it, the next each releases we're removing stuff from that and seeing how we can improve the graph. And once the graph became steady, that's when we started adding new features. Yeah. So that's how we're trying to grow.
Got it. So is Iris a paid product or is it a free product?
It's a freemium.
It's a freemium product. So I wonder if business models come at odds with growth. I'm sure they do, right? Like a free product, it just keeps growing, and then you say, all right, is it going to be 99 cents or is it $1.99, and then you drop off a whole bunch of users. Have you thought about that? Because at some point you got to make money, right?
Yeah, but again, Iris, we had to just sustain it because it was a fun thing, and we wanted to make money because Iris has a lot of servers. We have 4 or 5 large instances in Amazon supporting the answers and stuff. So we just wanted to make enough money to not to shut it down, so that we have, since we are building Friday, and Friday we are not looking at the building making money right away. We want to reach a certain number of users, engagement, documents, things like that. So in between, Iris came as a distraction, and since we have to sustain that, it should not take money from Friday's pocket.
Got it.
So that was only concern for us. So we were not really keen on churning out every penny out of the product.
Yep.
So we just had very minimal or nominal kind of payment. We had ads in that which sustained it pretty well. And some people were like, again, it was a social engineering aspect that people say, I want to remove ads. Like I don't want an ad product. I'm so elite, so I don't use product with that. So we just put a product, Iris with enhanced servers, which will cost you $5. It's ridiculous, $5.
Yep.
But if you're really that elite, go and pay $5. And a lot of people did that. So that came as a it was a good thing.
It's a nice bonus.
Yeah.
And Chamath, I know Zuck was extremely manic about not turning on the ads and going the monetization route too early. And so I guess for a long time, growth was the most important thing.
I think, yeah, growth was the only thing we ever talked about. We never talked about how much money we made. For 4 years it was just growth, which allowed us to sort of culturally have enough sort of the political capital to do whatever we wanted.
Right.
But what I would tell you is a reticence on monetization is a vestige of the web. And I just think the web is largely irrelevant now. And in the mobile world, people are willing to pay. They're buying $100 devices. They're buying $500 devices. They're buying 5 of them. And so you can charge $5, and what you probably are going to realize is $5 is underpriced. And that's the reality. And so it's great. It's wonderful. We don't have to worry about shitty ads and click-through rates. Now we have the ability for people to pay up front. We have the ability for people to pay on a recurring basis, and they will pay because they value things that optimize their experience. And when you're building something good, you can charge for it, and you can still win.
Yeah.
I think mobile phones and tablets are awesome because now you can actually build really, really great products that make a lot of money and that don't kind of have to get in people's ways and trick them into clicking on ads.
Right.
I mean, ads on the internet suck. And I just think when you look at how money will be made on these devices, they will not be made on ads. And so as a result, you should be thinking about monetization right away because it's reasonable. I was a very large investor in Yammer. Yammer was a very simple proposition, enterprise product, but it had this natural virality. It expanded, and it had a very premium nature to it where people used the free service, and then they wanted to upgrade. And all these individuals, even if the company wouldn't pay, they were willing to pay, and they'd use their credit card, even if they were paying for a product that they used at work. And so we were able to sustain ourselves. We were able to take some of that money and use it for inorganic acquisition. And we were an enterprise company that was growing like a consumer company. And 3 years later, we sold to Microsoft, which we can debate whether we should have done or not. But, that was a great outcome. And I don't think that would have been possible had we not done that right from the beginning.
Right. And I think that's a fair point. I'll actually stop for a second. I've got a few more questions, but is that the line, or is that just people standing?
That's the line all the way to the door.
Okay, that's great. So lunch will be at 4 p.m., guys. But no, lunch will be sooner than that. So why don't we just get going?
Yeah, so I just...
the initial question I had about monetizing, but I want to ask it a bit specifically here. When you have a larger customer base, when and how you decide to monetize? What are the means, and what is the trigger point? When should I push the button? For an example, I see two schools of thoughts. For example, if you take Apple, they do monetize from the beginning. But if I look at Facebook, I don't see actually Facebook pushing the button to say, okay, I need customers to pay $1 per month anywhere sooner.
Okay, look, if you're starting a company right now, I would not look at Apple or Facebook because I don't think they're illustrative examples. They're not good examples, and these are companies that, like Facebook as an example is a 2004 company. We're now in 2012, almost 2013. So a lot has happened. What's more interesting, the question I think is, what is the new ways that you want to monetize? And I would say two things. One is you want to start from the get-go and have an understanding of what is premium in the product and where people should upgrade. And then two is how you do it. So let me give some examples of models that I think work. So an obvious model that works is an upgrade path that basically unlocks a handful of features that are required. When you're building enterprise class software, the most obvious things are the things that allow the product to go from being just adopted by individuals to being sort of a core traditional enterprise deployed product. So logging, security, administration, LDAP integration, etc. So one is this sort of feature paradox. There's a free product, and then you upgrade to premium, there's certain things. I think he has a very clever example of there's the lack of other things, which is just the lack of advertising. In other examples, for example, again in education, why the ARPUs there are so high is because what people have figured out is that there's a constant way to add content into the product, and people pay for that content. So think of it as, in the video game world, the ability to buy action packs. And when you see now all of these next generation companies, they are adopting this. So, most of the people that have ever played Angry Birds, if you've downloaded the latest version of Angry Birds, what do you see? It's all a la carte and it's all content packs. That's how they generate. So the upfront monetization is irrelevant. So understanding these trends as they exist today and then applying them discreetly to your product make a lot of sense. Another clever model that I've seen is you use a bunch of features, and then there's two things that you can do. One is you can pay for these upgrades, or two is now people are engineering virality to overcome that paywall.
Yeah.
So instead of paying $3.99, invite 5 of your friends. And now what you do is you're balancing what is effectively paid acquisition, but you're doing it in a very different way. You're not directly going and buying ads, or you're not directly going and buying clicks or app installs, but you're incentivizing a behavior that isn't revenue positive, but it's also not revenue negative because you haven't had to pay for these incremental 4 people. So all of these new models exist. I wouldn't look at Facebook or any other example as an instruction on how to do this. Because these companies that get built today will A, get built because they're tablet and smartphone specific, and B, they'll implement these things from the beginning because it's not a bad thing. And people are willing to pay. And the companies that win, when you look back, will have realized that and have just started to monetize from day one.
Right. And there are, it's all very specific to your product, right? There are companies that are transactional in nature, and so you're basically, enabling a transaction, so you would take a penny off the top, or you would have these models.
So that's another example. One feature that's become clear is when you look at Uber, right? At least Uber is quite successful in the U.S. And when you start to dissect why is Uber successful and some of their other competitors are not, it's a very interesting choice that made exactly along this point, which is I would rather take a small amount from as many people as possible than try to take a lot from a few. And that is the inverse of how, again, many of these monetization businesses have worked. Again, particularly in things that were enterprise focused, but also certain consumer products as well. And so a lot of these subtleties, I think, as they get applied more broadly from the outset, you'll see enough successes where now, 3 to 4 years from now, we'll never have this discussion. When should I think about monetization? What do you mean, when should you think about monetization?
Before you started.
Right.
And Narayan, do you have any specific comments to add to that? Monetization, when to add?
We're not really there yet. We are not, engineered.
How are you thinking about it? Are you thinking about anything specific? Anything coming? You just said like a freemium.
Yeah, I think it comes further down the line because Friday is a product where we have a lot of opportunities to create value. So
Right.
it has a value add. So I believe monetization is directly proportional to the value add you give the user. So if you, for example, if you see Evernote just helps you create a note. It's as simple as that.
Right.
And people are ready to pay for that. That's like maybe that saves 10 minutes a day for them.
Yeah.
So if I can save you 15 minutes a day, you'll pay for the 15 minutes.
Right.
Because
Maybe
that's going to be the metric going forward.
Yeah, so maybe in the future, your first 10,000 documents are free, and then
Yeah.
you start paying.
That's it. The Notes application on your iPhone is free,
Exactly.
right? And Evernote's $1 billion company.
Right.
Amazing.
It's amazing.
Amazing.
Just cloud backup, right?
Amazing.
I think it's how engineered. I mean, how
It's
it's
amazing.
engineered, right?
Yeah.
How useful it is. You can do it from any device, and I think it's more than document. We feel we're going towards the context age. So
Yeah.
what we want to do is, my phone has a different dialer app. It's a homemade app which can actually, when I press the call button in the bedroom at night, it
Yeah.
shows me my girlfriend's number. When I'm in office and I press call button, my colleagues will come there. When I'm in the gym, it shows me my gym buddies because my phone knows my patterns with Friday. Friday actually captures all the patterns. If I call my colleague and he doesn't pick up the phone, and I press the call button again, the next buddy will come. He is the most probable person that I'm going to call. Because I think the phone should
Right.
become more context aware.
Truly smart.
It should be smart actually because it has the horsepower, it has the technology to become smart, but
Yeah.
the software is not up to that mark.
Got
So
it.
that's what we're trying to fix, and it's obviously the next thing to do, and I think people will pay for that.
Yeah.
And
Guys, the
that's
line is
platform.
super long. I got to move forward.
Chamath, you shared a very interesting statistic that on Facebook, if there are 7 users in the first 10 days, then there's a very high chance that the user will be an active user. So in a space with very strong network effects, would you focus on acquisition to drive retention? What part of the funnel do you focus on?
Sort of what I called the aha moment. So all products have that, which is that thing, and some products have many of those things. But there's always a moment when you sort of like, even when you use something for the first time, when something magical happens, you're not quite sure why it happened, or you're not quite sure how they engineered it. You just have this, it creates a sense of consumer empowerment. And I think all really good products capture that in some way, shape, or form. In Facebook's specific case, we knew what that was, which is when you see your friends and you see information from your friends, you feel extremely connected. And it's a very visceral, emotional thing that all humans have. And so we knew that we were sitting on a sort of psychological gold mine. The question was, how can we express that in something that can be algorithmically manipulated? And so, for us, it was really testing enough things where once we figured out what that simple rule was, just to find different ways of making sure that people got to that aha moment, being this number and this time, as best as we could. And so we felt that that was an engagement problem. So a lot of the time, when you would come to the site for the first time and you had no friends, we actually created stories for you. We called them fluff stories, just so that you wouldn't see a newsfeed that was empty, just to buy us enough time to go and hunt and find people that you may know. So
Interesting. Okay.
Questions. Chamath, let's say you have a product, a mobile product, which people don't necessarily know they need, right? It's more of an experience product. So what kind of budget and what kind of advertising can you do to get some inorganic growth for such a product?
Well, look, I think in those situations, you still have to find a fundamental core group of early adopters. In everything that I said, please don't mistake this as go and spend money. I think you can only use that as an instrument once you know that you've built something that's useful. The way that you know that you've built something useful is whether you have 500 or 5,000 or 50,000, is having enough of these core people use it where you know that they are as similar to a much larger group of people that you think can use it. So if you don't have that first group, then I think it's very difficult. In order to get to that first group, in my opinion, what I've seen people do is extremely grassroots. It's extremely inefficient. It's the people around you. It's the people that you know. It's going to groups that may express, patterns of the behavior that you want. In all of these cases, Pinterest, Remind 101, even Facebook, it was launched to these very, very small, highly closed, highly defined clusters of people. You have to do that first.
And Narayan, you said you had 10,000 users in your first private alpha. So can you tell us how you got to such an, what helped you get to 10,000 users at that stage?
So what we spent money on was more than advertising. We spent money on creating a video and sharing it with people. And it was not a video where it showed about the product or the UIs and stuff. It just showed what it does, how it helps your life. And so a lot of people were very curious, and we actually built on the curiosity factor. A lot of people signed up to see what this is about. And so we had like 25,000 signups, and we picked people who we thought might be actually using the product and giving us feedback. So that's how we got our 10,000 users. And as Chamath told, unless you have a graph to look at and see how your money is helping you in getting the acquisition, there's no point in spending money on acquisitions.
Are we done? All right, well, that was the session. I thank the panelists and the organizers. Definitely a very insightful session for me. Thanks, Chamath, and thanks, Narayan. A couple of closing comments from Sanjay.
We have a couple of mementos, and please wait, we have a feedback session. There's going to be a couple of numbers. Please pull out your cell phones and give your feedback on the session to the two numbers there at the bottom.
Okay, thanks everyone. I'm going to give away some mementos to Prashant, Chamath and Narayan. Guys. Yeah, thank you.
And Prashant will also give a voucher away for the winning question from the audience. You don't get it yourself.
Yeah, please, please.